Okay, this is the Cable TV Advisory Task Force meeting of July 24, 2006. In attendance, we have Donna Gasick, Quincy Vale, and Neil Ellis. What I want to do first is just distribute. This is, you've seen this before, but this is kind of the outline that we've been, at least in part, working from, which are the points that we've been discussing at various times. I know I had also put together a draft RFP, which I had sent to Peter Epstein, and he said from his perspective it would be more helpful to just use kind of an outline, send him an outline of the points that we're looking to incorporate, and then he would formalize it in terms of an RFP. So that's why I kind of went back to this. What I thought we could do tonight, since we've gone over most of these points at various times, although I have revised some of them to some degree, I thought if we could quickly try to go through these points. Some of them we've discussed already, and there shouldn't be too much more to discuss. Other points we may have some discussion. But go through these items and either modify them, eliminate them if necessary, or whatever, and then at the end of this, just vote to accept this document in its altered form, and then that'll go off to Peter for the final draft. So that would be my suggestion. So any problems with that, or okay? Then the first item on the list is again the duration of the license. As we've talked about in the past, I guess my sense is 10 years is probably what we ought to be seeking, given the fact that we are asking for a fair amount of items here, and I presume that there's a correlation between the length of the contract and the amount that we might be able to obtain. So, but certainly other options would be to not specify a duration or to offer shorter durations. I don't know what anybody else has on that. Any suggestions or thoughts, or do you want to go with 10-year, at least at this point?
We do typically vote on that or mention a duration of license. Was that done during the last license renewal?
I think it was that the intent would be to go with a 10-year license.
Sort of express a preferred term.
Yeah, exactly.
For what we'd like to see offered by Comcast, and
yep,
prefer that it be longer, like 10 years, i.e. 10 years.
Yeah. So, okay, unless there's any objection.
Well, I think that was Peter's advice, was to go as long as you can.
Right.
And I actually see no reason to go shorter.
Yeah, I'd be agreeable to that if it's satisfactory to our terms.
Yeah. Okay. So for now, we'll pursue that. Maintain cable and iNet drops and outlets and basic cable service free of charge. Again, that's what we have now, and we would want to continue that so that all the existing drops continue to be maintained and serviced to the extent that Comcast is required to do that. So there would be no change from the existing. Unless, point 3, provide a total of 75 additional drops for municipal buildings. The town shall determine the number and location of either cable drops or iNet drops in consultation with Comcast. Drops shall be installed within 120 days of written request for the aerial and within 180 days from written request for underground. Neil had given me a list, email maybe a couple weeks ago, I guess, of the high school's requirements. They have 56 drops that they would be looking for in the high school. And as I understand it from Neil's email, The other schools are set in terms of drops. In talking with Jonathan Matala, our IT person, he's suggesting another 15 drops. Most of them, 12 of them, I believe, are for various pump stations, for purposes of security. Right now we're using a Verizon phone line, but ideally it would be the plan in the future to run that off of the iNet. So there would be 12 for pump stations. The West School, which does not currently have a functioning an iNet, and there are 2, the Sargent Treatment Plant, and there's one other building that escapes me now that don't have functioning iNet service. So given that brings us, I believe, up to 71, so 75 is what I was looking to do. This other language here where it talks about extending the iNet to any new town or public school building, no less than 6 months' notice by the issuing authority.
Are these part of the 75, or that would be, in addition to the 75 if there was a new building?
These would be in addition. Yeah, that's a good point. In addition. It's the expectation, it has been in the past, and it would be certainly my expectation in the future, that any new building would automatically have a complement of at least one free, so to speak, iNet and cable drop. So, yeah. Comments on that one? Okay.
Is it is the standards for the distance 125 feet, 150 feet, that type of stuff? Is that pulled out of the current contract? These are some of the things we've had in the past.
Yes, that's actually taken from. Well, actually, I took that from the Bedford contract, so that's pretty standard. I believe that's in ours as well.
Yeah, I think that has to do with the signal quality past 150, and they have to use additional relay equipment past that.
And then point 4, this may be an issue for Comcast. I know from what Jane has indicated in the past, I think it's her belief that the iNet should only be used for very limited, essentially video. But in the current license, it lays this out, and I wanted to pursue this going forward, that the iNet shall continue to to be serviced and maintained for transmission of audio, video, and data between the town buildings. Potential uses shall include but not be limited to electronic mail, data such as payroll transmission, interactive teaching, energy management monitoring, security monitoring, fire protection, and municipal training. That with the exception, well, I think that all is laid out in the existing license. So we would want that to continue. Require the iNet system monitoring schedule detailing when performance testing and preventive maintenance work is required. I don't know, I don't expect, and I think in Jane Lyman's response to, earlier response to our questions, it doesn't appear that there's an awful lot of maintenance that necessarily goes on to the lines, but I think it would be important for us to have some kind of record or reporting of what kind of monitoring and maintenance does go on.
Was there a maintenance schedule required for the last?
No, no, there wasn't. And I guess that, just thinking about this further, we may want to require the schedule on some kind of periodic basis, whether it maybe be annually or I didn't put that in there per se, but or at least it's on some regular schedule.
I would imagine that they do some type of testing on a regular basis, so they could incorporate something like this into their schedule and routinely.
Unless they have like
Check
a
the
break fix
system.
kind of.
Well, I mean, I was gonna say, is it possible they just have some kind of, I don't know, computer protocol monitoring the line and that
Yeah.
going kind of all the time, and that whenever it, it detects a fault in the system,
Yeah.
That's what I have.
Could be,
light,
but-
a light
Yeah.
starts blinking or something.
But wouldn't it, could you then
It's a little bit more
request-
sophisticated than
Send
that.
an email.
But
Yeah.
maybe you could just request a report periodically
Right.
that,
Half year,
yes,
a year.
everything is fine from, so they reporting back to the town about, everything seems to be fine, we haven't had any,
Right.
if they haven't had any problems, just so you have some way of,
Just to maybe
having something on record
It's like the
that,
little iNet maintenance light lights up like in your car. Check iNet.
the dummy light, that
my service engine soon light.
Maybe if they just gave us a list of all the work orders that they've processed for our district as it pertains to the municipal side, or, municipal and school. Give us an idea of what was broken and fixed at least,
Okay.
if that's how they do it.
You know,
Yeah, some kind of a report of work done to the system essentially, right?
Yeah, I guess that would be a good thing. Like every 6 months or something, if there were any problems occurred that were fixed, so you have a report of it.
I suppose we could ask, since I'm unclear on actually how it is done, maybe we ought to ask them to provide as part of the RFP an explanation of what kind of ongoing monitoring and performance testing they do.
Sure.
And then as a consequence of that, look to receive some kind of reporting on an annual basis. Ask for
That sounds reasonable.
description of how they monitor. And schedule of work done. Okay, so we'll ask for an explanation of how their performance testing and monitoring is done, and then that they provide on an annual basis a report outlining the work completed to the iNet system. Okay. Work on the iNet system that may disrupt use of the iNet or require the system to be temporarily shut down shall be performed during off-peak hours, which I presume is, between 11 and 6, I guess. I don't know whether we need to specify that or not, but
Can they just coordinate with the town to ensure that necessary work is performed during off-peak times?
yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a good point. All right.
Yeah. They'll use their, I'm sure they'll come back and say they'll use their best efforts or something,
Right.
to do that. If it's I guess if it's an emergency, it's an emergency, you've got to go in.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if the system's, I suppose if the system's down, then we would want them to do it at ex post haste. Establish a response timeline, 24 hours within which Comcast must respond to contact from the town regarding problems with the iNet system and a requirement to resolve the problem within 72 hours unless an act of God or condition exists. We don't have that in the current license. And I don't recall, that number, that 72-hour number, I guess, was what I deemed to be reasonable, but that's certainly subject to discussion. I don't know whether 72 hours is...
Well, I mean, I think it's fine, but there's no way sort of enforce it. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's somewhere else, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, what if it takes them 96 hours? I mean,
Yeah.
What's the consequence?
Yeah.
it must be $5 or something, but, so that,
Yeah.
you know, I guess to have it mean anything, there should probably be some penalty associated with,
Fine, or
you know,
Yeah.
with
And I
with
guess
that.
you have to-
And I don't know if you have to define act of God, or if that's defined somewhere in the contract. You know, if, for instance, if they have a, you know, if their staff is on strike, is that an act of God? You know, if it's something that they sort of help create by not sort of extending an employment contract, I don't know. There's a bunch of pieces in there, unless there's already a definition of that term elsewhere in the contract.
I
I mean,
think
there probably should be. I mean, you know, flood, insurrection,
Yeah.
Some natural
blizzard,
disaster.
natural disasters, earthquakes, and you know, there's a bunch of things that could.
Yeah, I don't have that here, but yeah, I'm sure there is a definition of act of God.
Yeah, but you know, sometimes work stoppage is always the one that's
Yeah.
the hardest to decide which side of the line that's going to fall on.
Yep.
And if the INET is down for a period of time, I guess you can think in terms of what that would mean if, in terms of everyone's work loss, if the INET's down for over 24 hours.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it would disrupt some amount of communication, because some of the buildings have email via the internet, via the INET.
all of ours.
The payroll, all that stuff that goes back and forth is via the INET, so that would be pretty significant. As of yet, we don't have, we're not set up yet to be using the INET for security. Are you guys using it?
The camera security
Yeah,
stuff?
that's not set up yet,
It's in the works now.
Yeah, but certainly soon it will be.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
by the time
by December.
this goes into effect, it will be. right?
Oh,
I would
yeah.
think so, yeah.
So that would probably be,
Yeah, so what is
Good
the
to think about.
consequence of failure to hit the 72 hours? That's probably something I should talk to, get Peter's thoughts on, whether there would be some kind of a fine attached to that, or exactly how that would be handled.
And just on the, like, if they're not responsible for the problem, I don't know if you want to detail just the requirement to resolve the problem if they're responsible in 72 hours.
Yep. Yeah, resolve it if they're responsible. Probably take 48 hours to establish
Right.
who's responsible.
Usually does.
This is maintenance of effort here. Require that the INET continue to have at least 58 upstream channels and 29 downstream channels. That's what is in the existing license.
Is that sufficient? I mean, is that what? That just has to do with the speed of transmission, and I don't really know what this means. Actually, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, Neil, quite honestly, I'm not clear on that myself. I did email Jonathan about that to get his perspective, and he said, I got the sense that it had to do with capacity.
It's like simultaneous users, or?
Well, an upstream channel would be the same as like a channel on like your TV. So apparently, right now there's 58 upstream channels and 29 downstream. And the iNet itself, I mean, on our side runs on, say, one channel, and this town runs on one, and the security camera would run on one. So I don't think that we'll ever max those channels.
So each channel represents a kind of a section of the, or a space, so to speak, on the line that is occupied by a particular function?
More or less, yeah. It's a wide area, a network, sort of. A network runs all of its information on that channel.
Mm-hmm.
From what I understand, I mean, I don't know too in depth, but
I mean, if the public safety building, I mean, if we started to wire the town for security, and we had cameras at every water pump and significant municipal building or infrastructure, would each one of those cameras be transmitting a video signal on a separate channel? And then you'd have like a security guard sitting watching a bank of, televisions or something? I don't know.
with the digital thing, they all run on
They'd all
one,
run on the same channel anyway.
at least for the camera security. Because it's essentially, it's just streaming digital bits
Yep.
through the network, and it's being switched and routed as packets, so it's just basic ones and zeros.
Yep. So is this a holdover from a time before everything was digital? And they're all sort of video streams, and the idea was that you had to have multiple video.
Well, I mean, there is a certain amount of capacity in one channel, so you can only do so much on one channel, so.
And it's a lesser amount with an analog signal versus a digital signal.
I believe so.
Yeah. And 'cause I seem to recall when we went to the Comcast, went over to tour their facility, they were talking about for every one analog, the space taken up by one analog signal equates to like 6 digital. So it seems like from a capacity standpoint, you can put a lot more digital on.
Sure.
But my understanding is that we should be all okay on this. But I'll just run that by
Peter?
Donna, do you have any opinion on that?
I don't at this point, but I think that would be good to ask Peter.
Okay.
What is the specific language for that? What would be a good way to refer to it? So there's enough capacity. They're putting it in those terms.
Yep. Implement a senior discount. This one here, I think the questions really are in part whether it should be subject to income qualifications and whether it's discounted on the basic only or basic and standard tier. It seems like I've seen discounts in both fashions, some that are income eligible. I was looking at a license today, I think it might have been the Bedford one, where it was based upon Medicare eligibility and living in public housing, were a couple of criteria. In other cases, it's been across the board if you reach the magic age. Most of the ones that I've seen have been just on the basic, although there have been some that were included in the standard tier as well. It seems from what I gathered from the public hearings that we had, at least one of them I don't know whether it was you, Quincy, or someone asked the question about income qualifications, and the people that were attending, at least those that spoke, I believe, seemed to feel that it should be across the board. I don't recall seeing it or hearing any comments that it should be income-based. Although from a needs perspective, certainly there are people, just because you're 65 doesn't mean you necessarily need a discount. But
Who would process those the income qualifications, the forms? Who would process those?
I would expect that Comcast would have to do that. I'm not sure exactly how they would do that, and that may be a question to ask them.
I thought in one of their responses, in one of Jane Lyman's responses, he said that basically Comcast will administer it and implement it, and they don't externalize any of the costs. I mean, they just sort of do it.
Yeah.
Really?
Which, it's kind of hard to believe, I suppose, if that's... One of the things I have requested, Carol Hamilton is going to get me the breakdown of the number of seniors. I've asked to get the number of seniors from age 60 up and 65 up, depending upon what number you use. And then also, if we have any demographics that break the senior population down by income level between this and that, or sometimes they reference it in terms of a comparison of median income, 20% over the median income,
Sure.
20% below, whatever. So that might be able to.
I mean, as a matter of, I don't know whether we want to take the time to sort of try and hash this out, but as a matter of policy, what we're trying to do with this, which is, I mean, is it that as a matter of public policy, we think it'd be beneficial for people who are shut in, who are disabled or elderly or something like that, have basically the companionship and the information and the entertainment value that comes from having subsidized access to cable television services. And that would seem to set up, maybe to me, if that's what we're trying to do, then it's not so much a magic number of 65, but it's, are you eligible for Medicare or otherwise disabled or something else, right? Because clearly if you have enough financial resources, I'm just sort of wondering what's the underlying logic to try and figure out what the point is. I mean, cable's considered to be not a necessity for the most part. It's, I think the view of the federal government and a lot of people is that it's sort of a luxury. I mean, you can live without it. It's discretionary. So we're going to, I mean, I know there's great interest. I mean, obviously everyone would like to get something for less. I just don't know, and I'm comfortable doing it. I just like to maybe I'm not expressing it that well. I'm just not sure what we're after.
Jeff, did you get a sense from looking at the other licenses what the other communities were able to get for their senior discounts? Like, did you note that it was low income or needy seniors? Anything in particular that was consistent with the senior discounts that you saw in licenses?
Just that those that were income-based were based upon being Medicare eligible, Medicare, Medicaid, and I think that was certainly one of the requirements.
I mean, you could put a caveat in there for under 65, disabled, to be able to apply for.
I mean, I sort of think that in a sense that's a little bit of the way, as I understand it, Medicare kind of works, which is you're eligible for Medicare upon achieving a certain age.
Right, otherwise.
And if you're disabled,
Right.
it's like the law sort of says that's equivalent to being old, right? So you qualify for Medicare.
Under
That's what I was wondering, I don't know what the exact criteria
Yeah.
is
So
for
you kind of have both,
qualifying.
you have the magic number and have the,
Yeah.
But my sense is that the impetus for this, hasn't been so much with respect to the income issue or the lack of ability to pay, and I could be wrong on this, but this kind of is what I've surmised, that it's more based upon the fact that, when people are at a certain age, whether it's 60 or 65, there are many places that you can go, whether it's, I guess, stores or restaurants or whatever, that offer some kind of a senior discount, and, that's just based upon the fact that they're of a certain age, not based upon any income qualifier. And that's my sense of where this came from, that there's an expectation that, they do it in all these other places, why shouldn't we as seniors be entitled to a discount on our cable service?
Not that I mean to interrupt. My sense with stores and retail establishments and other kinds of things is they do this as a competitive measure, because they're in competition with other retail stores or restaurants, because they look at that market as a market they're going to go after, and normally it's, to get, like when Denny's and others do it, they do it for meals sort of ordered before, 5:30 or 6 o'clock. They're trying to sort of bring in clientele that otherwise they wouldn't either get or may go to other restaurants. I think as far as public transit goes, I mean, obviously bus lines, municipal bus lines and other kinds of things would offer senior discounts, metro and subways and things like that. And I think that the feeling is that that's, for some people that's a necessity to sort of get around. And if you're a senior of limited income, obviously if you're rich enough, you'd probably sort of take your own car or have someone drive you. Yeah. So if you're gonna, hobble into the New York City subway, they can give you a break.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, from our perspective, it would seem to me if it's just a senior discount based upon age, then essentially we're taking the position that that the reason for this is that seniors are entitled to a break, I guess. If we're taking the position that it's income-based, then we're suggesting that from a public policy standpoint, we believe there's some merit to giving people of lesser means greater access to at least some basic level of cable service, which seems to have more merit to it than simply just an across-the-board.
I think the way you just put it resonates more with me, that there's value in this service for information, for access to the town calendars or public outreach, that people of more modest means and maybe not adequate income are deserving to have, and we have it, so don't think it matters as to your age so much as that, yes, there's the entertainment value, but there's also this important community aspect to it, especially with the public access channels, that basically we should be striving to enable as many people to be able to procure the service as possible, and that would mean, I think, a discount for even folks with lower incomes.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen, I'm unaware of any contracts, but there certainly could be some out there that are based strictly on income, whether you're 25 or 65. I think
There's still age and income.
Yeah, and I suspect from from the cable operator's standpoint, first of all, they're very reluctant to grant this to begin with because I think they are concerned about the precedent of having localities, in their estimation, interfere with their pricing abilities. But I suspect they might say, well, if it's seniors in a given community, that population may be 15 or 18% of the total. It's probably even less if you add income into the mix. So it's, not a major factor, whereas if you opened it up to a population of any age based upon income, instead of being maybe 15 or 12%, it might be 18%, or it might be a larger percentage. I don't know, but so we can certainly put it in there. I guess my sense is that it's going to be a long shot to begin with, although Tewksbury got it, but again, not as part of the license, part as part of a side agreement. And Peter had suggested at some point when I talked to him that if you're going to get anything at all, it's likely that that's what it'll be. So you won't be able to enforce it. It won't be legally binding, but presumably, as in Tewksbury, they're offering it right now, right?
Right.
So I would think just from a PR standpoint, it almost becomes self-enforcing, because who in the right mind is going to decide once it's being offered that they're going to pull it? Particularly if Verizon's coming on board and there's another option, they're going to. So the enforcement almost becomes irrelevant.
Well, this is between, at this level, in my mind, where I'm actually seeing this add value is to access the sort of the public access channels. Mm-hmm. And that's a service that you can't get from, I guess Verizon, when they come in and negotiate, will have to offer some PEG access, but like the cable, the satellite operators don't have the public access channels. So it's, to me, a competitive advantage. At that sort of level, it's something that the cable company can offer potential subscribers that the vendors of the satellite services can't. Mm-hmm. And also, I guess what it suggests to me is that, well, I'm not sure sort of between sort of the, I don't have all the differences and tiers between, in front of me, but PEG is part of even the basic service, right?
Right.
It's just, so, the question is discount only on basic or also the standard tier. I'm not sure what more is included in standard above and beyond basic.
Yeah, I'm not totally familiar with the tiers either, but I believe some communities offered the discounts on a tier level, and people had to be eligible for Medicare. There were certain criteria for each of the communities that got the senior discount.
Presumably, Comcast, I think this argument has been made in the past with Jane, that the basic tier is their way of trying to accommodate people of lesser means.
Right, and that's why I look at basic is $10, and standard is $50.
Yeah. It's a bit of a difference there.
So if they were getting something like the standard and they were also seniors, so they qualify for a discount, it's really not that significant to the cable company.
If you took it, which I think is probably relatively the norm, $1 off the, so instead of paying
10% off the basic.
$9 or $10, you're paying $9, which.
Which probably everyone will get the standard anyhow, so.
Well, this doesn't list the difference between standard and basic anyway, other than the price. but that's,
And yeah, it doesn't tell you what.
it doesn't tell you what channels are in basic
Right.
and what channels are in
It's
standard.
hard to say.
Oh, actually, I know what to do.
Just that card.
Yeah.
Thanks. So this is probably an older card, but, because they changed the name, I think this is basic and then expanded basic,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
think they changed expanded basic to standard.
Yeah, actually, this is from March of '06, so it isn't really all that old, but yeah, but
306. Yeah, this little card doesn't have,
yeah, actually.
the term standard doesn't appear in it.
Oh,
Yeah. Doesn't have a date. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it actually says 306,
Oh, okay.
so it's not that old.
but,
Well, I guess, I mean, I don't know, maybe we just ask, here's what we'd like and see what they come back with, I don't know. I don't want to spend,
Yeah.
all night on this one thing. But I did want to try and get straight in my own mind and maybe our collective minds, like what it is, what it is we're after and what's
yeah,
the purpose.
it would seem to me from the standpoint of negotiation, I mean, ultimately, we're going to have to make some effort to justify what it is we're looking for, whether it's this or anything else. And it would seem to me that it's more justifiable if you're making the case that we're trying to to give people of lesser means greater access to information, local access, and so on, versus just kind of across the board discount. So I guess I would suggest that we put in there a request for senior discount based upon income qualifications. I'll talk to Peter about what he thinks would be appropriate, what the standard is that's used, and reference it for basic cable. I would say, at least at this point.
That's fine with me.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Then the next piece, I know we've had some discussion about here, the requirement that location of PEG channels remain together. The one change I did make here is the licensee shall not change said channel locations without 60 days advance written notice to the issuing authority. There was no time frame before, and I thought it would seem reasonable to have some required forewarning there before they do that.
Yes.
This is good, but the current PEG channels aren't together, right? They're,
No, there's
scattered.
9, 10, and 22.
so I think they should remain in their current
Yeah.
locations.
Yeah, yep, okay.
It'd be nice if they were all, 8, 9, 10.
Locations, yeah.
Yeah. But we definitely want to maintain the low number of channels.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments on that one?
No, that's good.
Okay. 11, have the right to obtain an additional PEG channel. Again, I think we've talked about this in the past. This one I took out of the Bedford contract, where they can demonstrate that the capacity is at a certain level for a period of time. Channels are being programmed with original non-duplicative local programming, 80% of the available cablecast hours during a 2-month period, and then available cablecast hours shall mean the hours between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m.
Yep.
Is that, it should say 5 a.m., 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. is a pretty short time
Available
frame.
cablecast hours.
I
Yeah,
would
that
think it would be
doesn't
5
sound.
a.m.
Yeah, I think it's AM.
I think I probably typoed that.
I would check the,
So that's-
where'd you pull this from?
That's prime time.
Bedford.
Bedford, I checked Bedford because,
Yeah, I think that's too short a window.
yeah,
there.
well, I don't know if it's too short, I don't know if it's too short a window, but you don't want,
But it-
so you don't want it to be such a broad window either. I mean, I think what this is getting at is, during prime
Prime
time,
time.
prime time cablecast hours.
Oh, yeah, that's true
Yeah.
too. Check that. Okay.
Yeah, that's
And
better.
what do you usually, how do you usually qualify viewing, like the records verifying the usage? Like what kind of records do you usually?
We keep logs of programming, of course, but we were limited as to what our, when our programming started and ended each day because of the type of system we had. But now going to a digital playback system, we won't have those limitations so that we can expand the window of time. In other words, we used to have someone here to physically put tapes in to show the programs for the next day. So someone had to be here, so they'd be here at 10 a.m. That's when they start the workday, so they could switch out the tapes at 10 for the rest of the day, you see. And that's going to change with digital, but as we get more programming, even here we've noticed that there's less time that we show community announcements because we have so much programming. So this is a very important thing to include.
All right, I'll check that. And then obtain a grant of $400,000 to WCTV, equipment replacement and upgrade. The disbursement of funds can occur in 2 installments. The first installment of $100,000 shall occur within 60 days. The effective date of the license, the final installment, $300,000, shall be paid on or before March 24th of 2009. I've seen some, the last time we did this, we had a portion, the smaller portion of it was dispersed, I think, within 30 or 60 days, and then the bulk of the $210,000 was dispersed, like a year later or something. I have seen one license, I don't know which one, I forget now which one it was, but where they had literally regular increments over the time of the 10 years. So it was, was it $15,000? Was it 15 or 25? Maybe it was $25,000 a year for 10 years. Each year they get $25,000. So I don't know if you have any particular preference on that, Don, or this is just.
Okay, yeah, I think I'd look into how that would be dispersed. And if you recall, at the last meeting, I also made a request to include, or actually change the wording. So it basically was a capital grant request that will include equipment and facility, equipment replacement and upgrade and facility, relocation and.
We should definitely keep this broader so that it's,
Yep.
they can't come back and say, well, what did you didn't
Okay.
you didn't use it for what you exactly said,
Yeah,
So-
because in most communities, I understand it's just called a capital grant, and it's
Yeah.
used for both equipment upgrades and any needs for the facility, and as you know, we're relocating.
Right. All right, so broaden it to say, to include
Yeah.
equipment replacement and facility upgrade or relocation.
Is there a reason also to separately break out 13 as a separate $25,000 as opposed to, I'm not opposed to it, but I'm just wondering, is it better just to say 425,000?
Yeah, I think that my thought had been that the 25,000 would be go to the town, but it may be more appropriate for it to come to WCTV if it can be earmarked for this purpose, because as a practical matter, none of us at the town either have the expertise or the time to get this up and running, you know.
We would happily assist you in purchasing that equipment. As a matter of fact, I think that was the proposal that I sent to you, of potential equipment
Yeah, I
purchase.
don't, did that have pricing on it? I remember you had, you did
Yeah,
list
it
the
was-
pricing on it?
Yeah.
Okay, I was trying to find that. You had emailed that to me, didn't
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you recall offhand what the price total was?
I think it was something like that, actually.
Oh, was it? Oh,
Yeah,
all right.
that's actually what it was.
Okay.
And also, I wanted to mention, well, first again, I don't know that we need to, as far as WCTV goes, even phrase it this way, WCTV equipment replacement, upgrade, and facility, or if it would be better said if it was just a capital grant that
Okay.
includes equipment and facility needs or something. But if you recall, I also increased the amount that we would request for the purpose of adding some additional funds for the needs of the future facility.
Yeah, you were looking at 700,000 at one point.
As a total capital grant.
Yeah, and I don't forget now whether I had this conversation with Peter before or after that came in, but I think when I suggested that to him, he was a little bit skeptical as to how likely that was going to be to happen.
A couple of reasons for that are, as you know, we've been still looking at potential buildings or a space. Actually, the property we looked at is so expensive to develop before even building a building that it doesn't look like it's feasible for us. But we've looked at 2 buildings that are owned by nonprofit organizations, and a verbal quote for leasing the upper level of one of the buildings was $5,000 a month just for leasing the building. And we would still need to renovate the building to fit into the building properly with the proper electrical requirements. Then we would need to upgrade and purchase new technology. That was one example. Another building, again, that we looked at, and I had an architect take a look at it as well, just, again, to lease the building long-term, we would hope to get a less expensive lease agreement, but just to renovate the building, the architect estimated easily $400,000 right there. Again, it's renovations, that's just preparing the building for our needs, electrical requirements, configuring it. So that is why, after these recent assessments, I really think it's smart for us to plan to include some additional funds to negotiate for the next 10-year license.
Well, I did have a conversation with Peter about the whole issue of FRCs, and the rough calculation, and this, it's hard to actually figure out what the impact will be, because it all depends upon when they borrow, how frequently they borrow, what the interest rates and the term are. But just, assuming the most recent info I have on subscribership is that there are 6,450 subscribers. So assuming, $1 a subscriber for franchise-related costs, which is a little bit higher than we are right now. We're at 87. So that's for $1 over the course of a year. That's $77,400, or over the course of 10 years, $774,000. So that, and it certainly, I don't think we would want to go over $1. I would think that would be the maximum. And so if we're looking at,
It's like 87 or 88 cents now, isn't it?
it's at 87, yeah, I think it's 87 right now. So figuring what 88% of that is, I don't know, 600 and some odd thousand, I would guess. So
So what
if
would
we
come-
have 25,000 for, the ability to broadcast live, and then we had put in there the ability to hire someone to essentially audit, do some kind of a limited audit and make sure we're getting paid what we're supposed to be getting paid. And we had put in, at least tentatively, that we would like to have a $25,000 grant made available to us 2 different times over the course of the license. So there's 50, so 75 between those 3. I don't know. I think 700,000 is really. I suppose we could start there with the expectation that it's going to be less than that, but
Well, yeah,
it's really
I'm
pushing the envelope, I think.
Yeah, I'm just anticipating that, they're not going to agree to everything we want to begin with,
Right.
so that if there was some room for negotiation in the entire capital grant for everything.
Yeah.
But the starting point, I don't know,
Yeah, I mean, that's always a tough call. I mean, to what degree do we pass the line from reasonable to unreasonable? I mean, and what is that, how does that play out in terms of our ability to negotiate? It's just like yesterday or Saturday, we were looking to try to purchase a car. And so we're talking about price, and they had come down pretty significantly on this vehicle. So I said, oh, what the heck, I'll ask them to take another $1,000 off it, which, is clearly not going to happen, but I figured, what the heck. I don't know. I think the relationship is going to be, once we get down to brass tacks, going to be pretty tense as it is.
well, may I ask, during the last license negotiation, could you give me any sense of what was the original amount of money and what percentage
Well, the original
was
amount
agreed
was
upon?
was 400. No, was it 400 or? It was at least 400,000. I seem to recall. May have even been higher, but I mean, ultimately we wound up at 210.
And this is 10 years later.
Hmm.
And I just think, in all honesty, as I said, looking into relocating the facility and how much higher real estate costs have gone up, construction costs, materials, technology, there's just so much. I don't know. I just took a look at some of the numbers and hearing that, imagine leasing a space for $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year times 10 years. How much money that is for leasing space.
Without any escalation clauses in your lease.
Yeah,
And not even utilities.
that's not even talking about utilities or equipment or,
That's probably triple that, right? But you're not for profit, so you wouldn't pay, you don't pay property taxes, do you?
no.
I mean, on the one hand, we'll start out at a number, whatever that is, and we'll wind up at some lesser point. I guess the other thing I think we need to be mindful of is response from the public, and I don't recall, quite honestly, that the last time we did this, there was an awful lot of, we weren't making statements to the papers and they weren't. I think we may, as one of the ground rules, attempt to establish an understanding that during the negotiations, neither side will, go back to the newspapers or something to that effect. But I guess to the extent that any of this becomes public, certainly the RFP is public, and if anybody happens to look at it, we need to be mindful of not being looking for too much money, because I think there is a significant amount of support for local access, but I think there's also an element of people that wouldn't really want to spend more than 50 or 60 cents a month for local access. And if we're talking of upwards of 800,000 between all the requests, people are going to say, geez, what the heck?
I wonder if we could, I'd just like to see it a little bit higher than the last time around, let's say, because it's, as I said, 10 years later, and we know a lot of costs have gone up significantly, so if maybe we can reach some middle ground with it. But something that would be...
What do you guys think?
Well, there was, there was significant public support expressed at the 2 public hearings we had, as well as written comments for WCTV. And I think we know that one of the constraints that the organization has is the facility in which it's currently housed. It's probably critical that some mechanism be found to enable WCTV to get appropriate space, habitable space, to do their job effectively. All right, so that's on the one side. The other side is the balance on, what's an appropriate charge on the bills. Now, I don't know if there's any sort of inflation built into it's been 87 cents, right, on the bill for 10 years now.
Yeah, wasn't that a
Well,
percentage
technically,
increase?
Or does that go up?
It's
2-3%. It's come down.
Yeah, it was in the low 90s at different points.
Well, the way it was explained in one of the responses, I think, from Jane Lyman, is that basically it's just a they just look at the amount of the grant and sort of take a present value of it and then assume that they estimate how many subscribers they're going to have in any given period and just divide by the number of subscribers, and that's the charge. And then every year they sort of true it up based on whether they have more subscribers or fewer subscribers. So if you have more subscribers in the system, then the charge per subscriber comes down. If they have fewer subscribers, it would go up. So they recoup their grant amount.
Presumably in this case, and this is something I was thinking about as well, Verizon, once they get online, so to speak, they're going to take some amount of market share. I mean, my estimate, just kind of throwing a dart, is that, over the near term, they might pick up anywhere from 20 to 30%, in the first few years. So that means instead of $64.50, Comcast number is going to be some less than that, which would suggest that the remaining members will have to pay a higher tab. But
I don't know how that sort of issue of subscriber migration to a competitor plays out.
But you sort of handled that sort of in their formula. I mean, depending on their subscribership, comes down to a certain number.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the way their formula works, or unless if the contract has some kind of, Verizon pays them.
I doubt that.
I doubt that too, but
part of the difficulty or the challenge, I think, in terms of WCTV and the relocation is that whatever happens, it seems to me WCTV needs to be mindful of the increase in ongoing costs relative to their ongoing income, because even if you get 400,000 now, a portion of that's going to be spent on equipment, which is, perhaps, I don't know, 5 to 10 years of time you can get out of that. But then there's, to the extent that there's an increase in operating costs going forward because of that new facility, whether it's a lease or ownership situation, that one-time check is only going to be helpful for a period of time. It's really, in order to be sustaining, it would seem to me, WCTV has to account for revenue that's going to match up against that higher expense.
And we're definitely looking for other sources, sponsorships and grants. We'll be exploring.
Well, I don't know. I just personally think 700,000 was a little bit high. Was it 600,000? Is that? Does anybody have any?
Did Peter give you any sense of what he thought would be a more reasonable amount if he didn't agree with the initial?
No, he didn't really give me a particular figure other than to say, gee, 700,000 seems like it's not realistic, essentially, I think was what he was suggesting.
Again, it would be, I'd be willing to consider a lower amount, but again, to keep in mind that we probably won't get exactly what we, negotiate for
Right.
at the beginning. So, I'd like to at least try. I would like to increase the amount that we have listed here. That is
Okay.
really basically what I put forth initially for equipment replacement and upgrade. It was specifically for that reason, but not including anything about a new, a facility or relocation.
Right.
So if we do at least have some funds that we negotiate for the purpose of a facility, I think we should at least try to negotiate for something there as well, not solely for equipment replacement.
Yeah, well, I think based upon the last time around, the request, as I recall, was at least 400,000. It might have been higher, but the ultimate number was 210. So, and I believe there was justification for $400,000 worth of equipment 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So presumably there had to be some kind of winnowing of what was purchased, at least through these funds. So if it turns out, if, for example, we're looking for 600,000, it turns out we get 400,000, then I guess, a decision will have to be made by WCTV as to whether to spend all of that money on capital equipment, or whether to spend, 250 on capital and 150 on whatever.
I don't know how creative we can get or would want to get, but I'm wondering if something could be set up where maybe sort of 400,000 could be offered by Comcast to WCTV for equipment and stuff now, and some additional monies, 150 or 200,000, whatever it might be, offered on a challenge grant basis that would require matching from other foundations or other gifts for you to claim. So it would provide some motivation to go out and beat the bushes, but also to it's also nice for donors to give, to say, well, if I give money, then it'll be matched dollar for dollar by Comcast up to a certain amount.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's sort of creative, I don't know, we want to put in the RFP or we sort of get into negotiations about things that might be helpful sort of all around.
Yeah.
Yeah. matching funds like they do for public television.
Yeah. So, maybe something, so, I mean, yeah, that probably doesn't necessarily need to go in the RFP per se, but when we get into the negotiations in terms of how to get to 600,000 or 700,000, whatever, if some portion of it is a match of X percent up to 200,000 or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, dollar for dollar match up to 200,000. Then other donors, are sort of more excited to give because they know that their monies are being doubled.
So matching gift program, that type of thing.
All right, well,
Yeah, so,
okay, I think that's a good approach once we get to the table. With respect to the number, 400,000, Donna, you're looking to have that higher than 4, and I'm thinking it probably needs to be less than 7. 600,000, is there any?
I think that would be a good starting point for the negotiations.
Okay, let's do 600,000 then.
yeah, and then Verizon can come in and give money and it can be matched by Comcast.
That really sounds good. Even better idea.
Or something.
The 25,000, I think I'd like to at least in some manner reference that separately so it's clear that in addition to the Comcast requirements, there's a specific requirement for this equipment for town broadcast of emergency information.
Actually, that's a good place to get grants too, emergency management.
And I'd be happy to give you that list before you go tonight.
Okay,
Jeff,
yeah, I know I
too.
saw it, I don't know what the heck I did with it. I've
Okay,
got
I
about
can-
12 different cable files on my desk.
Sounds like mine, too.
Okay. Require Comcast to make available to the town twice during the duration of the license a sum of money not to exceed 25,000 on each occasion to be used by the town to obtain financial, technical, legal assistance or consulting services in areas including but not limited to conduct of a financial audit of Comcast gross annual revenues as it relates to local access payments or a survey of customer satisfaction. I had put this in there, that second piece, and then when I was going through this again this afternoon, I was really having some kind of misgivings as to whether we ought to be looking, maybe we want to keep it broader, but I guess, is it necessary or appropriate that we ask for Comcast to provide us money to do surveys? I don't know, maybe it is.
Have you spoken to Peter at all about this or gotten a sense from other towns' licenses whether they've included any kind of language about anything like this?
Yeah, no, I didn't talk to Peter about this one.
Because I think it's important information, and maybe if there's some way just to say they need to give the town results of the financial audits.
Yeah, I mean, as a practical matter, I know this was one of his major points, and I think it certainly has merit that, we're accepting Comcast's numbers at face value. And even Peter, I think when he was out, mentioned that in one of the towns that he was working in, they, I guess, threatened to do an audit, and suddenly there was $10,000 forthcoming in additional money. So, I suspect there's room for judgments as to how they calculate these things, and the last thing they may want to do is go through an audit. But as a practical matter, and I've talked to Mike Kyra about this, he's not really interested in putting money up for an audit with the prospect that we may or may not get something in return.
May as well just take the 25,000. That's what he's kind of saying.
No, as a, sort of as a line item on the town's budget.
Right, yeah, he doesn't
Oh.
want to spend town money on the prospect, you know, to put into, to audit them with the prospect that we may or may not get money back.
May I ask are there any other town contracts that might have something like that included in the contract, that company that the town is dealing with for a large project or something would have to provide information about their...
Not that I'm
Your
aware of,
financial-
no.
Is there already I'm just going to echo what you're saying. I mean, is there already a right to audit or inspect books that relate to, you know, the cable service contract in the current contract? Or do we have to sort of, Amanda's sort of comment, it's a common term in contracts that if someone's getting paid and you have the right at your own expense to sort of, you know, review the books relating to the payment. So if we already have that right, then I think it's easier to say, well, let's come up with some way to fund it. So it's you know, if you have the right, but you don't have the resources to actually hire a financial auditor to do it, then it's sort of, it can't be, it's sort of a dead letter. If we don't have the right, and no other town has that right, and you're going to get a fight from Comcast saying, you know, we don't let anyone inspect our books like that, and you know, we're not about to start with you.
Right.
Well, yeah, I would expect that we do have the right, and I can't recall specifically language in our license that addresses that, but if Peter was working in at least one and maybe two other towns
Sure.
on this issue and had suggested, and I believe the way he described it was they had sent a letter to Comcast, or whoever it was, saying that we are considering auditing your books, and the fact that they received a payment would suggest to me that they recognized that the community had the right to audit, and I suspect they must have concluded that rather than going through that process and potentially being found
Sure.
in default by a greater amount, let's just give them 10,000 and hope that they accept it.
Well, it seems to make sense to me, and I think that there is that right already
In a contract.
in the contract. I mean, there's probably, you know, provision
Yeah.
in it, but yeah, so the and I know this is important to Wayne. I'm just wondering again, also, well, Peter will go through this. Obviously, we have our rationale for it. Maybe it's better though to keep this more general, which is, you know, make $25,000 available for the town to obtain financial, technical, legal assistance or consulting services relating to, you know, anything reasonably associated with provision of cable service. And just yeah, leave it more broad.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we decide that, you know, it would be most helpful as a survey, then do the survey. If we feel like something's not right with the payments, then do an audit or,
Okay.
you know.
Okay, I'll make this more broad then. Maintain requirements that WCTV receive 5% of gross annual revenue, with definition of gross annual revenue to be as comprehensive and inclusive as permitted by regulation and law. We have a pretty expansive definition in the license. I think it's of all the words that are defined in there, and this one's like half a page. And still, unfortunately, given the ruling on, internet services, which, you know, I thought we were hoping that would be part of the fee, that was deemed not part of the fee. So that, Peter seemed to think that in light of our past, you know, where we've had 5% now for 20 years or whatever, that this won't, shouldn't be a problem. It certainly is, we're in a better position than if we're at 3.5 trying to go to 5. So it would seem to me that that's, we want to get the language as broad as possible.
Yeah, my understanding is most of the communities that have recently negotiated their contracts with Comcast have been able to maintain their...
Percentage?
Yeah, the percentage.
Okay. Require that Comcast continue to pay to the town a license fee of 50 cents per subscriber per year or some greater amount, including a percentage of gross annual revenue if state or federal law changes to allow the same. So basically, in this one, again, I'm looking to maintain what we have, which I believe is, it is part of the regulations anyways, and then just create the opportunity if, on the unlikely scenario that that 50 cents becomes a percentage number or increase, we would get that as well.
Now you did it.
Now, out of the tape.
Yeah.
One more tape here, so I have to talk quick. It's like the Rosemary Wood tape. There's going to be 27 minutes missing. All right, this is side 3, Cable TV Task Force 724. Seek agreement that the cost for PEG access, that doesn't sound right, that PEG access costs shall not be externalized. I think it's important to put this in there. I wouldn't want to bet on this being agreed to, but it seems to me most of the time when communities have various access associated costs, they wind up being externalized or borne by the ratepayers. But it's worth a shot.
But now the capital grant is externalized. Right, I mean, that's the franchise-related cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
the PEG access cost is the
PEG access costs.
Town fee of like 50 cents per subscriber?
No, actually, PEG
Or is
access
the-
costs, I guess
the
I was...
5% of gross annual revenue?
I was considering that to be all the PEG-related costs. Maybe I need to be more clear. And again, ideal situation would be that the 400,000 and the 5% be built into their overall program rather than a separate charge coming out of that to cover. Whether that's, it's probably not likely, but even if we could get a part of the access-related costs, whether it's the 5% or the $500,000 or $600,000 grant, whatever, to be internalized, that would be a victory. But so you think I should be more specific there and reference? First of all,
I'm just asking what it means.
yeah, my meaning was to be encompassing what all the costs associated with local access be internalized.
I mean, so it's like, our preference is that,
Yeah,
but then our next preference is that if they refuse to do that, then, clearly explain to us how they're gonna calculate the FRC, including,
right.
what they're using for their cost of capital if they have to borrow it,
Yeah,
or, what they're doing
yeah,
embedded in there.
right. We would prefer that you externalize it, but if you, internalize it, but if you can externalize it, tell us how it comes about. So that's 17 and 18. 19, Comcast should provide detailed explanation of their plans for future cable service, both in the near term, in the next 18 to 24 months, in the longer term, to the extent foreseeable. This explanation shall at a minimum address changes in the number of channels offered, changes in the number and content of channels within each pricing tier, changes in the on-demand, premium pack, and a la carte choices, plans for other types of programs and channel bundling or unbundling, plans for the increase, decrease, or change to the type and number of digital channels offered, plans for the increase, decrease, or change to the type and number of analog channels offered, plans for changes to equipment offerings, plans for customer service call centers, bill paying and equipment exchange centers, plans for visits to subscriber homes or office for cable installation, setup, or troubleshooting. So essentially, we're looking for them to lay out for us any changes that they foresee in any aspect of their business.
We'll see what they come up with.
Yeah, there'll probably be some generic statements.
Yeah, we're constantly reviewing offerings and plans to remain competitive, and as technology changes and
The only constant about change is change.
yeah, I mean,
Comcast shall be required to provide annual reporting about their telephone responsiveness. The reporting shall be provided in an understandable and clear format that details the number of inquiries, number of times callers received busy signals, frequency and duration of wait times before being connected to a customer service representative,
Do they track all that stuff?
number of times a single caller is transferred from one contact representative to another to address their inquiry. The information should be reported by month and restricted to inquiries about the Wilmington cable system specifically if possible. Yeah,
I know you think this is not very helpful. Well, I'm saying, I'm just trying to think, like, you know, more and more companies in Comcast, not that, I don't know if I've called them, but they do almost everything with computer responses. And so what does it mean, you know, wait time before being connected to a customer service representative? And if the computer
Picks it up right away. It's like
and
zero.
they say the computer is our customer service representative.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you can schedule service, you can change your
Check your bill.
service, you can check your balance, you can do everything just by, I hate it, but it takes
So when
forever.
you say when speaking to a live person?
Yeah.
As long as it takes to press one for English.
You know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I just, and I mean, I know that there are other,
That's true.
I know, Jeff, that you have just separate issues entirely about, you know, what's a complaint?
Yeah.
What's, you know, adequate
What's an issue?
resolution? What's an issue?
Yeah.
What are they reporting? Just generically anyway, but I don't know what we're gonna get out of this.
Yeah, because there's two methods of getting
Yeah,
answers,
it's,
resolution to a problem.
Well, yeah, and clearly they do most of their stuff via automated response systems. So I don't know, maybe I need to adjust that. Well, certainly number of inquiries, number of times calls, busy signal frequency and duration,
So,
wait times before connecting to a customer service rep. I guess, yeah, whether I say customer service rep or alien.
Or alien.
Customer service rep or automated answering system.
or Quincy, are you suggesting, and maybe this is what you mean, to kind of turn it around and say, provide for us the type of reporting you're going to do so that we, you know, let them explain.
Yeah, give us a
the kind of-
proposal and then we can,
Yeah, the kind of reporting they're going to do so that you can track how well they've responded to customers and provided customer service. You know, I guess that's what you'll need to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose ultimately, how do they measure their responsiveness? They're always touting the fact that, you know, their customer service has, you know, has improved immeasurably and
Yeah.
they're very responsive and so on. Well, how do you reach that conclusion? What is
Right.
it that...
Let them explain it to you, like,
Yeah.
how did they arrive at that conclusion?
Yeah.
And what is their method for monitoring customer service?
I will relate a little story because relates to this and it's very impressive. I mean, this is a good story. We had a problem with our internet access to Comcast. We have internet access. The TV was fine. And I was at work, and my sister-in-law, who lives with us, said the internet's out. And I had her cycle the router and everything else, and nothing happened. So she called Comcast. Must have been about noon or early afternoon. They showed up like 2 hours later, like the same day. They were there, and apparently a squirrel had been chewing on the cable outside, and they rewired the cable and then replaced the route. We were leasing the router from them, so they gave us a whole new router, which was I guess 2 or 3 years more newer equipment, and it was all done and there was no charge.
Wow.
Because it was out. If it had been inside wiring, we would have had to pay for everything. But since it was outside, before the drop or something, they just did it. So it was actually very impressive.
That was an act of nature.
Yeah,
An act of God. Squirrel is an act of
Back
God.
to squirrel, okay.
Anyway,
That's good to hear.
to be fair, it was.
Wow, that's...
Okay, I'll revise that
Yeah.
and ask them to essentially explain to us.
Yeah, I just know from years of serving with you, Jeff, that there's been sort of a pet issue with this whole reporting thing on customer service, and then it's just not very helpful, and it's
Yeah.
not very informative, and you don't know what anything means, and I don't know how to make it better, but
Yeah. All right, require maintenance of local customer service center for bill paying, equipment drop-off and pickup with regular business hours. These are the current hours that they run 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and Saturday 9 to 1 at a minimum. In addition, and this is something I just put out there, but in addition, the customer service center shall remain open one evening per week until 7. Comcast shall provide monthly data for the most recent 12 months period detailing the number of customers who utilize the customer service center by day of the week and hour of the day. At base, it would seem to me we ought to at least maintain what we have, although I don't have any empirical information to suggest how much use the service center is getting. I know the last time we did this 10 years ago, there was they clearly wanted to get out of the mode of having a full-service center in Wilmington, and ultimately did after the 5th year. But, they were suggesting that there were just other more efficient ways for people to either pay their bills or drop off equipment. So, just to be fair, I think it's reasonable to ask them, well, how many people are using the center? If it turns out that it's not being used that much, then there's probably no basis for looking for additional hours, but I just don't have any real information.
my dumb question of the evening is, where is their center nowadays?
It is,
Where do people go now?
Yeah.
it's over at, where Foucacia's is, that little
Is it in
plaza
there?
It's in
Oh.
there.
It was there. I knew it
Yeah.
was there. Okay, it's still there?
Yeah, I've never been in there, although I I did call today just to confirm what the hours were, and I did go through that whole system, 1 for English, 2 for, and then eventually, and it didn't take too long. I was kind of curious to see how long the cycle time would be, but it was relatively prompt. If Comcast conducts a customer survey of Wilmington cable subscribers, the town would like to receive a copy of the questionnaire and the survey results. Amongst the questions that should be included on the survey are, and these are some of the questions that were included on our survey, or some of the issues that we were looking to identify. If you recall, we got a fairly small response, but if they do it as they did in the past, and I believe Jane said they were going to conduct a survey, they come up with some kind of number. I'm not sure how they do it, but they essentially identify some number like 350 people or whatever that they consider to be a statistically representative sampling, and then they call them and ask them questions over the phone.
Excuse me, maybe then would it be appropriate to ask for what that, how they determined who those 350 people were to conduct the survey, you know, like how did they,
Yeah, how do they arrive at their big...
those
their-
particular...
Not people on the payroll,
How'd they make their selection, yeah,
hopefully.
so that,
Comcast, yeah, how do they establish their populations?
so it's a
Survey
representative number, a fair percentage of the population or of cable subscribers.
sample. Okay. Comcast shall update the town on changes in technology with respect to digital and non-digital box, high-definition cable box, a la carte programming, parental control devices, and any other devices utilized by cable subscribers to enjoy cable programming. So that's more just information and stuff. Actually, I probably could pull out a la carte, because I've addressed that in the previous, there's this other section where I'm asking him to talk about that. This is more related to the technology. And the next one is the audio leveling issue. I think we did get a couple of comments there at the hearing. That seems to be an ongoing issue with them. It would be helpful to know what they can do to reduce that problem. Comcast shall provide quarterly reports that identify number of cable outages, date and time that each outage occurred, duration of each outage, and the location within Wilmington of each outage. Comcast shall describe their emergency response override system, which state or local officials have access to utilizing the override system, whether the system works on an individual community basis or regional basis, and how the system works in the event of emergency. I've asked Jane about this in the past, and she tells me that they are compliant. I think the federal, the FCC has some kind of a standard, but it's more of a national response. And there was something I was reading just recently in one of the, I think it was an RFP from Amherst, where they were talking about, they acknowledged that that system is in place, but there are instances where there are emergencies that are more of a local nature as opposed to a state or federal nature. And there's a level of, and it's still important to have emergency override there, so.
Sure. So the Amherst RFP ask for authority to implement a local override, or, I mean, this just says describe. I mean, does that open the door in negotiations to actually getting such a local override capability?
Yeah, I think we ought to pursue that. In the Amherst one,
Was that Massachusetts or New Hampshire?
Mass. Yeah. Well, I think we ought to seek to have a local override, whether it's possible or not. I guess we'll find out. It's a local override.
There was something just the Globe today, I think, about changes to all these new technologies relating to the E911 service between cell phones and different types of telecommunication systems, and they're not all voice over IP telephones and other kinds of things, and it's a tremendous issue for emergency access. And I didn't read the whole article, but I think it was just in the business and technology section, and I saw something either yesterday or today about this particular, this is part of the same issue.
It certainly is an issue, because
And does your override, does a local override a national override? Like, can you override the override?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, if there's a national
complicated.
override and the local
National
people.
emergency, yeah, and something happens at the same time, I don't know.
Well, as it stands right now,
We are at war on a couple different fronts, I mean.
Right.
Presumably, someone should worry about things like this, right?
as it stands right now, do we have the capability on the PEG channels to just cut in and,
Yeah.
Yes,
We
we've done
do
it. We
that.
did it over the winter for school emergencies.
okay,
We're still, basically, we have remote access to the system. However, we haven't gone so far as to give that access to the superintendent of schools directly or the fire chief or police chief. That's the goal.
which is
It's
potentially
still-
what our 25,000 might do if we were able to
Yeah.
get that to equip
Right.
us to do that.
Yeah.
And is that, the 20, the money that we would use to purchase the equipment, is that portable so that the superintendent could broadcast from his office, or Chief Stewart could broadcast from his office, or do they have to come to
Well-
a particular location?
That was what I understood, is that they wanted to report from their office.
Certainly, that would be
It's
ideal.
portable, though, too, but it's,
Yeah.
the intent, we believed, was right from where they are.
Right.
In their office.
Okay. Comcast shall provide a map detailing the existing cable plant, including location of amplifiers, nodes, fiber lines, coax, identify all areas not currently accessible or served by cable. That should be not a big deal. Require that Comcast provide the town with an accurate description of the equipment and work required and the cost to relocate the equipment located at the current head-end facility at the Lincoln High School Public Safety Building. The description shall also include any equipment or non-cable related issues that the town would be required to address as part of such a move. The town is seeking to have Comcast relocate the head-end to the Public Safety Building. Now, Neil, somebody that you were trying to talk to?
Right.
Hasn't got back?
Well, no, he did get back and basically said that his people wouldn't really be able to give an accurate cost because it's all Comcast equipment on the street from that point on, from the building on, and that he wouldn't really be able to
Okay.
tell me what that stuff is.
This next one is, if you recall, we just talked at the last meeting about kind of the more global commitment that Comcast should be making in terms of emissions. I did have a conversation with Peter on this, and he was not particularly in favor of us adding this in. He was, I think, essentially saying it's not something that Comcast is going to, it's kind of out of the scope, and he doesn't believe that Comcast is going to really want to hear about it, essentially.
I think the idea was just to have it in there as something that we voice at least.
Yeah, I don't know where this
Right.
will go. I think this is what I actually spent today pretty much discussing. This becomes more imperative every day. And I think we have to have something just to ask the question, especially with respect to Comcast's technical and financial wherewithal, not so much to operate a cable system, but as a corporation. Insurance companies right now are more and more not writing insurance policies for directors and officers' liability insurance unless the corporation, major corporation, has a policy on global climate change in place.
Well, that's
Oh, yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, no, this is on a global level, this is a serious issue among pension funds, the reinsurance companies, and insurance companies. And this is a 10-year contract. I mean, if we don't ask the question now, we don't get a chance to ask it again
Yeah.
Right.
for 10 years. And I think we need to go on record saying this is becoming more and more important. And everyone has to do their part to to ensure that, what they're doing isn't worsening global climate issues. They can come back and say it's none of your damn business, but
At least you said.
I want them to know this is important to their customers and contractees.
Yeah, I wonder if we put it in the context of their,
Please, it's like, please describe Comcast's corporate commitment to reduce its direct emissions and its indirect emissions. And, are you working on a plan? Do you have a plan? What's your plan?
Yeah, I mean, who knows if they are? Maybe they are a corporation that's starting to look at this.
yeah, okay. I mean, in one sense, it wouldn't seem to, the RFP, they're going to respond in some manner, so it's probably not. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we all know, we know the facts, and I don't need to sort of tick them off. I mean, I agree that yes, this is a contract for cable service. It's not sort of directly on, but they do a lot of business in town, and I think we just need to start asking the question of every vendor and every company and every, to the extent it'll be every household and at some point it's going to affect everybody. So we might as well start. And again, we're looking for a 10-year deal, so
I think
if
it's
not now, then when?
I think it's an excellent idea because anybody doing business in the town will realize it's important to the community. That it's something we all need to look at.
All right. Number 30, Comcast periodically provides information about their community outreach. The hand-in-hand Comcast 2005 community report provided to the town in March of 2006. I should probably say it was provided. Comcast shall document the specific non-FRC community investment made in Wilmington. We periodically, I think it's maybe monthly or every other month, receive a little newsletter from Comcast that has them, their different people with their pictures taken with the various community leaders providing one thing or another. So I just think it would be interesting to know what level of, what kinds of things are they doing in Wilmington.
Sure. Yeah, what you probably want is this says specific, I think you need to edit the specific non, probably hyphen, dash or hyphen FRC. Yeah, take out the E.
I think
They require the boilerplate terms that are in the existing license, including insurance. There's a whole slew of different terms that are in the existing license that presumably would be in any future license. We'll have Peter make sure that the amounts of that, the insurance don't change. A few additional items here that I didn't list in this draft was another point that we should ask them about is the measures that they use to maintain privacy of their customers. I think it's probably federal laws, as it is on just about every other front, but they should maintain information, privacy of people's information. And
Sure.
how does that work? Also, there was, again, I was looking at this afternoon, and I didn't go back and update this document, but
Especially reselling subscriber lists or email addresses through Comcast to their subscriber.
Also, that we've been asking for a term about them to describe their quest to preserve picture quality and to eliminate or reduce, mitigate
Yeah.
excessive pixelization, if they have any
Yeah.
protocols about about maintaining that and ensuring that doesn't overly deteriorate. So it's something less than a sort of an outage.
Right. Yeah, that was in the draft contract that we talked about before. I'm going to have to merge these. In the Amherst contract, or in the Amherst RFP, they actually had, actually there's a couple of things that I thought were interesting I just wanted to reference. One was information about their financial circumstances. In this case, they were looking for financial information, full financial statements, including all the following for each of the last 5 years: income statements, balance sheet, cash flow statement, any footnotes that are or may be necessary to understand the above, financial projections for the next 10 years, including income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statements, all footnotes, assumptions, including projected operating statistics. The applicant should submit its projected operating statistics for each of the 10 years of the license term in the town of Amherst, including the number of miles of distribution plant, number of homes passed, number of cable subscribers by type. Applicant should submit its anticipated operating projections for each of the 10 years of a license term, including detailed revenue by type, including subscriber revenue, installation income, equipment revenue, basic/other tier subscriber revenue, premium channel revenue, pay-per-view revenue, on-demand interactive cable revenue, other subscriber revenues, including all revenue attributable to cable operations not included above, non-subscriber revenue, advertising income, home shopping revenue, or other income, all other income, including income attributable to leasing or sale of time or facilities. Then detailed expenses by type, including direct operating expenses, programming expenses, net bad debt and collection expenses, salary and benefits, repair, maintenance, light, heat, power, pole and duct rental, administration, office and billing, marketing, local origination, depreciation and amortization, capital expenditures. So they were looking for a pretty little. And I guess the question is, and I don't know, maybe they have some financial gurus there, but if we get this information, what is the consequence of it? You know, what are we going to be able to, is it going to be helpful to us in some manner?
Yeah, what do you do with it once you have it? And
Yeah.
It sounds like you can't do much with it.
Well, how do we-
10 years ends.
I mean, is it going to be useful to us with regard to the negotiations? Is it information about them that would be helpful to us? Probably in some manner, I
Yes.
guess.
Well, how do we assess how do we make a judgment as to the financial qualifications of the entity applying for a license without that?
Right.
I mean, do we have to make some finding that they have sufficient financial and managerial and technical resources such that they are deserving of a license? That's just as far as legal as the legal standard goes.
Jeff, do you know?
Or maybe we can just do it as, sort of a, let's just make a sort of judicial finding of fact.
They'd have a fly-by-night.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I agree that if we're gonna get a pile, if we ask for, we get a pile of information, there's not much we're gonna do with it, other than look at it, and, well, maybe you could ask them, but, we'll get their annual report with their financial statements, and it is a publicly traded company with all the footnotes, and a prospectus, or whatever there is, their 10Q form.
I mean, I guess my shorthand way of looking at their financial wherewithal is to find out what are the rating agencies think of them, as just Standard & Poor's or Moody's or Fitch or whoever it is that's
Yeah, they pour over
evaluates,
these things.
Are they AAA or are they
Yeah.
A1 or whatever.
Sure.
May I ask, do you know who the attorney was that represented Amherst in that negotiation?
I don't. I think I got this off of the Mass Cable Divisions.
Yeah, I was just curious if they hadn't dealt with the company before and therefore requested it, or, it's hard to say.
I think this is a renewal. So, I don't know, maybe I can pose that question to Peter to find out, to ask him if he, well, first of all, I guess, do we have to make some kind of finding that they have the financial wherewithal to carry on? And I guess if he thinks it would be helpful, we can include it. I mean, I guess it's going to be an awful lot of information. I'm not sure
That's a ton of information.
that I'm necessarily going to come away with any greater authority with respect to negotiations than it, But I just wanted to put it out there. So I don't know, so if I run it by Peter in terms of that question of whether we have to rule on that issue, number one, and then if we do, is this the type of detail that we should be asking for? I don't recall, well, I'm almost certain, 95% certain that we didn't ask for this level of detail 10 years ago.
Well, as you mentioned in past meetings, I mean, the company has changed how many times, too, so that,
Right.
how do we know if the company today is run or managed as well as it was before, if it was,
I remember this was sort of an issue with the license transfers,
Right.
Which was, this new company was going to be formed to hold the license, and the statute said we had to make some assessment as to, the ability of the company to operate a cable system. And you're like, well, there's no history, there's no board of directors.
Yeah.
It hasn't been formed. How are we supposed to make some assessment?
Yeah, it was really kind of interesting. I just wanted to read something that they included in their license I thought was kind of interesting. They took apparently different clips from various news accounts, I guess, trying to make their different points here. But one of the things in particular, remarks of the FCC Commissioner Gloria Testani made in a speech entitled Public Educational and Government Access Channels, Localism and Diversity in Action to the Alliance for Community Media on July 13, 2001. PEG Access is, quote, television by the people and for the people. It represents the purest form of media democracy. Now, with the growing consolidation of media, the role of PEG Access is more important than ever, end quote. Ask your franchising authorities to put a stake in the ground. Encourage them to do what they can to counter the trend toward bigness and sameness by supporting greater resources for PEG Access channels. Channels overlaid with interactive television could gain an artificial advantage over, quote, plain old vanilla, end quote, video channels. Another issue is the importance of PEG channels receiving accurate listings in the cable operator's electronic program guide. Cable operators should use the increased digital capacity to renew their commitment to their communities. The Vermont Public Utilities Commission has taken a significant step in this area by requiring its cable operators to set aside 10% of their broadband capacity for PEG access services. I hope that in the minimum, digital cable technology will encourage cable operators to allocate more channels to PEG access. As cable operators get bigger, control over programming will be held by fewer and fewer gatekeepers. For better or worse, the content of television has far more influence on what Americans know what they think, far more influence on what Americans know what they think and how they govern themselves than what is on the internet or in the newspaper. But the more consolidation that occurs, the greater the value of PEG access programming. PEG access is an antidote to the danger of cable industry consolidation. The ground-up programming you get when you empower people to create their own shows can be a welcome contrast to the top-down, lowest common denominator of network programming. I also applaud the education and government use of PEG access channels. I've long supported the use of technology to improve education. In the same vein, there is little doubt that educational opportunities can be enhanced through educational access channels. Government access channels are without question an important exercise of self-governance. C-SPAN is a great contribution that the cable industry has made to Americans.
So Comcast provided this as part of their...
No, this was what the town of Amherst put in their request for proposal. I guess they're
So they clipped
making
that
a
in there.
point about the value of
Here,
public
here.
access.
That's really
But
good.
one of the things that it sparked me to think about and suggest is that in terms of addendums to include in the RFP, one of the things we'll include is a list of locations where we want the cable drops, both continuation of the existing and future ones. I think it may be valuable to include the 400,000 line item list of equipment that you put together. And it might also be valuable to include either as an addendum or somewhere in the body of the RFP. I'm
This
sorry,
is
I
the
can't say
really
anymore.
important thing.
Oh, so-
It'll have to be held in suspense till the next meeting.
Yeah. The other thing I think that would be valuable to include in here is some information from the handout that you gave us some time ago that talked about local access's contribution in terms of the hours of programming that's produced and all. Remember that document that you had given us that outlined some of those things? I know I have it back in the office, but I was thinking of trying to pull some information from that and putting that in here.
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to provide that.
And then also we'll include at least by reference the ascertainment documents, the 2 hearing notices, so that again, those will demonstrate the level of commitment that people have to local access. So those are the points that we have. I did want to talk just a couple of minutes about some of the questions that were posed to Peter, because what his response was on the global warming item, but there was a question about requiring broadband, requiring digital access or something. Can we just ask Peter how to...
For the specific terminology on that, maybe?
Can we have... Oh, should we reference high-definition equipment for WCTV with a current standard? And again, I think Peter seemed to be suggesting that it may not be necessary or worthwhile to pursue high-definition equipment for WCTV. I think his comment was, do you really need high-definition TV to watch the Board of Selectmen's meeting?
Well, someday will we have any other choice? Do we know?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
Do we know for sure?
If that becomes a standard, then
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reason, really. It's not, we don't always have the funds to have the latest and greatest technology, but we want to have what is available at the time to make sure everyone can view the programs.
Isn't it that, digital will become the standard, but the definition level of the digital will be up to individual
Yeah, we don't,
sort of
we
systems,
we can't really say today, but
So, the equipment the equipment that you're going to be purchasing will
It's,
adjust for that, or will,
we're calling, it's primarily digital.
yeah. But the equipment that Comcast makes available, that's the equipment that we're focused on with this point here, right? Is, do we require that Comcast at some point make that equipment compatible to a digital format? Okay.
Because we want to maintain the quality of the programming. We don't
Right.
want people to turn the channel to the local access channel and it looks terrible versus any other
Yeah.
channel.
But it would seem to me reasonable that we do that, that Comcast, as things evolve here, we don't want to be stuck in the 20th century, so to speak, if they're running programs that require 21st century technology. So I guess we'll put in a point where essentially we want them to ensure that the equipment that they own and operate that allows local access to broadcast, that equipment remain up to date and capable of broadcasting digital signals.
Yeah, I guess it would be enabling all the
Whatever
same
comes, yeah.
functionality for the PEG access channels that any other channel or programming they provide across their system
Yeah, if you
can utilize.
and if you want to say in same level of same quality.
Yeah. Okay. Those are the points, those are all the points that I have, so I don't know if there's anything else anyone wants to add. What I'll do at this point is put this in final form, and then send it off to Peter. I think there's a few various questions that we raised along the way here, but get clarification from him on that, and then have him draft it up in a RFP form, and then send it back to us, and we'll put it out, and wait for a response.
Do you have any idea when that possibly will be?
I'm going to need to talk to Peter about what his schedule is. My plan would be to get this off to him this week, because I'm going to be on vacation for the next 2 weeks, so I want to get this out of the way before I leave. Otherwise, we're way behind. So hopefully, middle of August, late August, I guess. So we've gone through all the various points. I guess what I'd like to do at this time is just get a vote that essentially accepts these issues as identified, and we'll go from there. So if there's a motion to accept both the points that were previously raised in the discussions with the draft RFP, in addition to this outline negotiating points, with the idea that these would be provided to Peter Epstein to formalize in an RFP.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and the only other thing I wanted to give you, and I don't think I had given this to you before, is just kind of a general outline of the Verizon process. We did receive the RFP. I'm sorry, it wasn't the RFP, it was the application.
The application.
We received that, I think it was the week of July 4th. I quite honestly haven't really looked at it yet, but we need to have a written document outlining our needs by beginning of October. So as soon as I get this thing off, then I'm going to have to, I guess, put something together there. Presumably it would be fairly similar. But this is kind of a rough outline of the timeframes here.
So they filed the application now, so the process has started. Are we passed, it says 3 ways to start the process. Cable
Yeah.
provider files application, so they did that.
Yes.
With a copy to the cable division.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we have 12 months?
that's right, 12 months. Interestingly enough, Mike Kyra last Friday, I was out of the office most of the day, but when I came in, he had given me a press release that Pat Hardy from Verizon was looking for. She had drafted up and had quotes that she was looking to attribute to one of us about, our interest in moving forward and so on. And
So pleased to be working, excited
Exactly.
at Verizon.
And so I looked at it, and I don't want to certainly get off on the wrong foot with them, but it was essentially that we're just absolutely enamored with the idea of all this. And so I suggested to Mike that we'd be that we put in there something to the effect that we couldn't necessarily agree to the quotes that they were attributing, but that we were interested in moving forward in this manner with the hope that they, something to the effect of refrained from their efforts to undermine the local franchising abilities. And so I'm not sure if that'll appear in press releases or not.
We're looking forward to a vigorous negotiation.
So under the for what it's worth column. Okay, at this point, I don't really think that we need to meet until September. Given my schedule, and I'm going to be off in 2 weeks there, so we won't be able to meet in August anyways. So I guess I would suggest that we meet in September, and then at that point we'll have to be talking about the Verizon application, which between now and then I'll put something together on that. It's got all kinds of
Yeah, it's nice.
the first. Well, let's see, I guess Labor Day is September 4th, right? Which is our first Monday. So the second Monday is the 11th. Is that good for everyone? Sure. Could do it again at 7:15.
So that was September 11?
September 11, yeah.
Yeah, life goes on, huh?
Do you want to try that date, or I guess September 18th will be the next one. We're getting closer to the deadline there for the RFP to get, where it's not really an RFP as much as it is an outline of what we're requiring from Verizon. But I would think either the 11th or the 18th.
I think either's fine with me.
Yep,
I-
that's fine for me.
Me too.
All right, let's go with the 11th. I would prefer doing it sooner.
Because we have to be able to issue a written report by October 1st.
Well, I think technically the 90 days expires on the 5th or 6th of October because it's based upon when it actually came into our office, which I believe was the 5th or 6th. But yeah, right early October.
So we'd have a meeting, discuss it, and then have another meeting right before it's due to go out, sort of on the
I
On
think
the 5th or 6th to
probably,
approve it?
yeah, let's see, when's the first Monday in October is actually October 2nd. I'm gonna have to go back and confirm the exact date that we received it, but, yeah, it would seem to me we'd have to meet, say 9/11, to review it, and then one more time to vote on it, and then, so if we can do that for 10/2,
We'll have Columbus Day somewhere.
yeah, I think Columbus Day is like the 7th, isn't it? Or let's see, my calendar doesn't reference the holidays. I mean, the 9th, I would think the 9th is, yeah, so it would be the week after. So tentatively, then, we would be looking at the 11th and then the 2nd to finalize the Verizon document. And then, let's see, depending upon what we can issue the RFP on Comcast in August, September. Probably we'll have to start negotiations, I guess, in October, so it's going to be pretty crazy. Well, you know, this is what we get paid the big bucks for.
Okay, so
All right.
noted. I just had one thing, if I could. I had some articles that, I went to the Alliance for Community Media conference, and some of the articles in the most recent issue of Community Media Review were referenced in some of the workshops, so I thought I'd give everyone a copy of a couple of good articles, I thought. For example, Access in the 21st Century, and just the different writers just talk about where they think Access is going in the future, and I know we talked about that a little bit, so I thought they would be interesting. So that's one packet.
Oh, there's a packet, a whole packet, okay.
Yeah, there's a couple of them. Little light reading for everyone.
Yeah. I'll read it right before I go to
And I
bed.
have one for Wayne.
That's one.
All right.
Well, motion, we adjourn?
Is that a handout? Oh, yeah. I thought there was a handout.
I second the motion.
If we're done, can we
All
adjourn?
those in favor, it is 20 of 10. All those in favor, aye.
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 Okay, so moved. Thank you.